Hey, Eric.
Hey, John, how's it going?
It is going well, I would say.
Nice and pleasantly warm and dry.
It happens to be that way in the desert, I hear.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're both still in the same time zone.
Yep.
Well, not the same time zone as normal, but we are both in the same time zone. Actually, I guess it is the same time zone as normal because Arizona does not honor daylight savings time.
Right. So they're technically mountain time, but since they're not doing it this time, they're currently on Pacific time.
Yes. So anyway, that's a long way of saying we're both in Arizona. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's fun. I should figure out a way to cut half that out. So, hey, what's new with you this week?
Oh, gee. Well, so since we are in Arizona, I got to go visit my nephew, and his wife had a baby, so I got to go visit the newest member of the family.
Fantastic.
So I snuck out, and that was fun. He's got wispy blonde hair that sticks straight up.
Ooh, all right.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, fantastic.
And he didn't cry when I picked him up, so apparently I'm not as horrible a human as I thought. Maybe
it's been a while since you've had a baby of your own, I would say.
Yes, and I have no intention of changing that anytime soon.
I'm with you right there. That is absolutely true. Yeah, so it's nice to be down here. Weather's been great. It's been cooler than I expected. I was worried that towards the end of May, I've never been to Arizona outside of like November and February, so I was worried it would be over 100 degrees, and
right.
So far it seems nice. So
it has been downright Oregonian like in weather. I think it even sprinkled on us on the walk home from dinner tonight.
Oh, wow. So awesome. Welcome to Arizona. Well, it snowed on me in Tucson in February, so
that's right.
Weird. So let's see. I had two minor pieces of follow-up. One that stays in the intro, which is that, as I promised last week, I have supers on my beehive, so hopefully the bees are making honey for me. And
so how long before you get to take possession of said honey?
In a nectar flow, the bees can fill a super pretty fast. So it depends on what's around. But the blackberries in our area haven't yet bloomed or blossomed, and so we should be in for. I think the timing is just pretty doggone perfect, I think. So, it sort of depends on if I take some stuff in the middle and kind of make more work for myself, but somewhat more fun in that you get kind of something in the middle, or if I just wait until late July and take everything off. So, I don't know is the short answer, but
okay, yeah. I was going for, is this a once a month honey acquisition or once a season honey acquisition?
This is once a season, except that if and when they fill a box, you could technically take it off, scrape it, and then give it back to them and let them fill it again. But it's a lot more work, so it's easier to just put a second box on and then eventually process all of them. And I've got like 7 or 8 maybe boxes that they could hypothetically fill. That's not going to happen. So.
But you're prepared in case they are prolific bees.
I believe that, being ready for anything, what's that Boy Scout motto? Boy Scout motto, right?
Be ready for excess honey.
The problem is if they actually did fill like 8 boxes, I'm pretty sure that each box is like 30 or so pounds of honey. So 8 times 3 would be like 240-ish pounds of honey. And let me just say, if that were to happen, I hope that I have friends that will come out of the woodwork, because I don't know what the heck I would do with that.
It would be one of those good problems to have.
Well, I feel that way. We'll see. We'll see. Funnily enough, down here, I've found two other people. we're at a work thing, but two other people have come up to me and said, "So you keep bees, huh?" I have bees. I'm like, "Hey,
really?
That's awesome." Yeah. How awesome is that?
Apparently, software engineers are also closet beekeepers. Who knew?
I don't know. See, I'm setting a trend. We'll see. All right. Let's actually get into the meat. Get into the meat instead of the honey. So, I did actually have one legitimate piece of follow up, which is Steve Troughton Smith, who is a iOS developer, or I should
prolific.
say a Mac developer and prolific. And I don't know what he does for work, but he's broken a few stories by sort of reverse engineering accidental Apple posts of source or of binaries over the years. But he has a post out. I saw a bunch of tweets, and then he was like, "Oh, maybe I'll write up a post." And he did. He wrote up a post about automatically translating an ARM iOS app to Intel Mac OS using Bitcode. And he basically automated the process of extracting the Bitcode from a iOS app binary or app package and automatically compiling it using Marzipan to Mac OS. So now that Marzipan exists, which is the worst kept secret of an announcement that Apple is expected to make at WWDC in 2 or 3 weeks. It's not really a secret because they sort of announced last year that they were going to, and they released a couple apps that used it. But it's I'm not close enough to the Mac. I mean, maybe you know. I mean, how is he getting access to? How did he develop Marzipanify in the first place? Because the libraries
no
exist.
idea.
Okay.
No idea.
Yeah. So, anyway, as you will recall, an eternity ago, when Apple first announced the whole concept of Bitcode, which was, I should have looked this up. It was a very, very long time ago. I seem to remember you and me having a conversation of, oh, dude, they're going to be able to automatically. And there was a lot of speculation about that at the time, too. Yeah. And Chris Latner, who was the author of Swift and LLVM, who was at Apple at the time, was like, "Oh, no, it's not for that, and it's for more basic platform transitions like ARM chip versions, that kind of thing." But I mean, come on, that's totally going to happen, and so Apple's got to make the moves that they need to make to allow essentially apps that are submitted to the App Store to include Bitcode so that Apple on their back end can recompile apps for a different CPU architecture and then essentially have hundreds, thousands, probably not millions. I don't think the Mac App Store actually has millions of apps. But tens of thousands of apps ready to go on day one. So,
yeah. So Marzipan is going the opposite direction, right? From what you're referring to, Marzipan is going from ARM to Intel, and what we had talked about was having Apple on their laptops switch from Intel to ARM and be able to translate all those Intel compiled apps into ARM-based apps. Where this blog talks about taking ARM-based iOS apps and converting them to x86, right?
Yes. This is the reverse of what an expected Intel CPU to ARM CPU transition would require. But you could certainly easily imagine a world where there's a common app framework like Marzipan that allows development of a single app to run on both platforms. So you're already going to be having a lot of commonality in how you're designing things, and then to be able to supply what is, essentially what Bitcode is the intermediate representation of the source code. That it's a compiler-based intermediate representation, so that if you have a compiler, it can take any number of source languages and then output to any number of destination CPU architectures. You can imagine that the first, or one of the things that such an architecture would do would be to take all of the input languages and compile them into an intermediate representation, and then separately you take that intermediate representation and convert that into the actual device-specific opcodes, etc. Right? So Bitcode is essentially that intermediate representation for LLVM, and that the thing is that for iOS apps, I believe the default is to package your iOS app with Bitcode enabled, so that when Apple makes minor tweaks to their ARM, they go from the A11 to the A12, they can retarget the app with those minor architectural tweaks on the server side, behind on the back end of the App Store, to get you improved performance of your app on a new CPU, a tweaked CPU architecture,
without you having to recompile.
You don't have to recompile. You don't have to resubmit. And Apple, another thing as a developer you can think of is Apple gets the benefit of having hundreds or thousands of apps that they get to use as a test suite for their new CPU architecture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Well, I think the big one on this one initially that I remember getting called out was how when Apple went from 32-bit watch apps to 64-bit Apple Watch apps, that nobody had to recompile their stuff.
Right.
Because Apple just tweaked the bitcode, and now your app ran just fine on 64-bit architecture without recompiling. So
Right. So anyway, I pulled out a few quotes from this article, but we've talked about it probably more than we needed to at the moment. But I will say one thing about this, because this is there's not without gotchas, and for example, if there's any inline assembly in your app for whatever reason, and automatic reference counting, which is a feature that's by default enabled for, I believe, all projects these days. There's a quote in here that says ARC appears to use inline assembly, which means you'll need to disable ARC for a project to be able to do this. Because essentially, if you're hand typing inline assembly, you're typing assembly for some target architecture, and if that's x86, well, there you go.
Right.
But anyway, so I guess I haven't even mentioned. I mean, the whole point of this is that we talked about this a little bit, and I didn't go back and re-listen to it, but in episode 50, the title of the section seemed to be John lets his inner conspiracy theorist out. So I'll just say
that's right.
25, 26 episodes later, we'll see. Anyway,
if you were proved right or not. Was it a conspiracy or was it fact?
Exactly. We'll see.
Cool.
All right, that's it. That was quite a follow-up topic. So, what you got for me tonight?
My topic this week was another one of yours and my favorite, social media oopsies.
Oh, there's so many to choose from.
And it's our favorite Facebook/Instagram, actually. But sadly, it's probably neither of them. It's a third-party company. So there was discovered a database on an unprotected S3 bucket.
Of course there was.
yours and my favorite tool for hunting down those kinds of things, Shodan, discovered. So it's an article from TechCrunch where apparently a company named Chatterbox, they just threw out the vowels. They said, we only like the O. Chatterbox, every other vowel goes. Had a database of a large number of Instagram influencers, including their bios, their profile pictures, the number of followers they have, if they had verified their location, city, country. But it also included private information and the Instagram account numbers, email address, and phone number, stuff that shouldn't be publicly visible if someone was scraping.
Right.
And they had information about how much they had calculated the net worth of each of these influencer accounts so that they could determine how much they should pay them if they could get somebody to post an ad. And of course, shortly after, the researcher couldn't figure out who it might be, so I guess contacted TechCrunch to help them find out who it was. They tracked it down to this company, Chatterbox. Probably got to be careful how I say that. Chatterbox. Chatterbox.
That was clearly a company started when there was a vowel shortage in the Valley.
Yes, when vowel shortages were cool. They pulled that database offline, and the company later tweeted, because that's how you reflect news about your company anymore, is they tweeted out claiming that only 350,000 influencers were affected and that the database was only sitting there for 72 hours. But of course, the researcher says, well, actually, we see 49 million accounts, and it has been available on Shodan since May 14th, which would be well longer than 72 hours. But because this is a third-party company that probably acquired the data from somewhere, somehow, Facebook was contacted, and their response was, we are looking into the issue to understand if the data described, including email and phone numbers, was from Instagram or from other sources. We're also inquiring with Chatterbox to understand where this data came from and how it became publicly available. So this was a couple days ago that this story came out. So I think this probably will have some follow-up next week. But once again, stuff online. If you're in social media, there's just no more secrets.
Yeah.
There are no secrets.
You can't afford it.
Because somebody's going to screw up.
Neither you nor I were probably in that database, so.
No. Although I did read a couple separate articles. It looks like this was a company from India, and a lot of the celebrities, it sounded like, were more from the 64 million Instagram users in India. I think that's what it was. And so they were more of the influencers in India. I found an article from the India Economic Times, or Economic Times of India, that had some additional information as well.
Interesting.
So, but I'm sure we'll have some follow-up on this one next week.
Yeah. Well, clearly Facebook's still giving them access to data, though. So
well, somebody is.
Yeah.
I think the Economic Times for India article that they had reached out, they gave them an expanded, Chatterbox gave them an expanded response, which included a statement along the lines of, we didn't acquire the data illegally. So, okay.
Well, are there strong laws to prevent you from acquiring the data? I'm going to go with no.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. All right. Yeah. This whole show could wind up being relatively short and sweet. I know I'm pretty tired.
Well, that's all right, because my something fun will blend quite nicely.
All right. Nice foreshadowing there. So my something fun is something actually both of us pasted it into the Slack channel, which is kind of funny. But this is a blog from Google of Google Security on how effective basic two-factor authentication is. And I know you actually read this one because you posted it in there too. But so this was interesting because they provided some data extracted from the people logging on to Google services, and they've got a wealth of data with regard to fraudulent logins and account recoveries, and what security a given account has set up, etc. And they are quoting some of that data here, which is what I think was the most interesting thing about this. So, for example, I mean, we know that SMS is not what we want from a two-factor authentication, but it's certainly better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
So the data that they said was, if you set up a recovery phone number, an SMS code sent to a recovery phone number helped block 100% of automated bots, 96% of bulk phishing attacks, and 76% of targeted attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Which is...
So it's still pretty effective.
That's pretty doggone effective against the vast majority of things. So even 96% of bulk phishing attempts is pretty good. There's some other data later on about targeted attacks too. So, the on-device prompts, which is basically using OS notifications, not SMS, to do the two-step.
To approve or...
helped prevent 100% of automated bots, so that's still... Can't make that much better. 99% of bulk phishing attacks. So, an extra 3%, but a pretty critical 3%. That's pretty powerful. And 90% of targeted attacks. So that's a pretty significant closure of the 76% to 90%, more than half of the gap there for targeted attacks. And so, that's some nice data. That's some nice data there.
Yeah.
So
it kind of gives you while I guess maybe the more people complain about SMS, it's still, at least like the studies went on for a year. I actually read some of the actual detailed study published articles that were presented. What's that?
Backing it?
Yeah. And they spent a year doing the studies on hundreds of thousands of accounts in conjunction with Google. So it was Google and I think NYU did one, and Google and University of California, San Diego did a different type of approach. And they did the one that I thought was interesting was what about if you go out to a service and try to hire somebody to hack an account? So the targeted accounts.
So right.
That was actually the one that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I did actually. I pulled out some notes from those too. Just a second here, because it does say that Google, even if you don't have a recovery phone number established, they can try and do a weaker form. If they see a suspicious login, they can fall back to just a challenge of some sort. One of the examples they had in here is like, where did you last log in? And if you stop the login process and ask for something like that it said that that's effective against bots.
Yep.
Because a bot is expecting to be able to log in, and challenged with anything that requires some form of knowledge about the victim, sort of immediately will negate any of the bulk phishing, where they're just trying to get into your account by the most basic means possible. So it says this is an effective defense against bots, but protection rates for phishing, and it doesn't even say for targeted phishing, it just says for phishing, can drop to as low as 10%. Probably because you're clicking on the link. And if you're clicking on the link, you're probably wherever you logged in. They also say that, that's because if you're clicking on a phishing link, you're probably thinking that you're going somewhere legit, and it will probably look legit, right? And somebody is far more likely to think you're actually logging into what was that one we talked about the other day at Chase Bank, I think, right? I would type in my password and then get the error, your account did not work, and then you're like, what? Well, maybe I typed my password in wrong, or maybe did I change that? If you're not using a password manager, well, actually, if you're using a password manager, it should prevent you from putting the name and password in automatically. You could still go and do a search and copy and paste the password and give it to a phishing site, but hopefully, somebody who's using a password manager is going to have a better chance, I would expect, of not falling prey to that. So anyway, as you were saying, and this was new to me, which I thought was interesting. Like you said, they called them hack for hire criminal groups. So these are groups that supposedly you can ask to break into a particular account, and they'll this is where you do for example, a spear phishing campaign, or you might be the victim of a spear phishing campaign where somebody actually goes and does a bunch of research on you and sends you emails that are very plausible from either coworkers or family, and very relevant to you as a person, and not the generic stuff that you just maybe ignore. And so your people are more likely to click on it. And at that point, the other thing there is that they'll say, or this said that for a fee on the order of $750. So if somebody's willing to pay $750, can they get into my Google account? I don't think so, because I've got better security enabled, and I'm not going to click on links generally, but that's worth. That's a lot of money, and for a targeted attack, you can imagine that. They did say, though, that they estimate just 1 in a million users face this level of risk.
Right.
So in the U.S., that would really only put that at what 250 to 350 users, hypothetically.
Hypothetically. I mean, they're going to be your journalists or politicians or
celebrities,
your Instagram influencers.
Perhaps what might have been in your
yeah.
Although that was 350,000 users. But
their definition of influencer is a little bit looser than maybe
right. Somebody worth actually
trying to hack.
Yeah. So the other final point I guess I'd say for this is that Google has said, but nobody in our advanced security program was breached. So Google does have an advanced security that you can enable for your account. You do have to have a hardware token, and they basically restrict features such as limiting the apps that even if you wanted to, you can't share data with just any app, because that increases the level of risk and has extra recovery steps. But that is something that I don't actually have it enabled on my account.
Well, and even if you don't have it enabled on your account, the research did show that just using a hardware security key was 100% effective against bots, bulk phishing, and targeted attacks. So I think, at least from these two studies, the data is quite clear that a hardware security key is even that much better, right? SMS will get you 75%. An on-device prompt will get you 90%, but a hardware security key 100% probably plus or minus some percentage
I was gonna
point
say,
because it was statistically right. The same way someone could phish your SMS code, they could potentially phish the results of your hardware key, but
right.
it just gets harder.
If you're clicking on if you're on your own laptop clicking on a spear phishing link and you've got your key plugged in, which okay, maybe you don't keep your key plugged in, but you still have to not be willing to plug your key in when prompted for your challenge. So anyway, I was a little skeptical of the 100% there, but hey, it's still an interesting
the research
article.
studies actually have their statistical plus or minus, the little chart in the simple chart in the overview blog post that Google posted doesn't really have the confidence
and I didn't,
for all of them.
I didn't read the underlying paper. Yeah. Go, Eric.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I was going to say about the underlying papers that I thought was interesting, the hack for hire one, there's a section on, they basically went out and tried to hire somebody to hack themselves, right? They created up some dummy accounts and created some fake personas and then went and tried in the black market to find someone and how much it would cost to have them hack that account, and then said whether or not they were successful.
Mm-hmm.
And the section I thought was interesting was their legal and ethical issues, because even with fake accounts, it can be technically illegal to, solicit a criminal to hack you and those kind of things. So they went through and talked about Google's legal staff and, University of California, San Diego's general counsel. And because they owned all these things, they kind of list out how they made it legal and how to avoid. Yeah, they had the whole thing. Anyways, that was the interesting part for me in this hack for hire. And then they go through the details of how they contacted the criminals. They actually did pay them some money. And how they, all those bits of information. So the actual details, the hack for hire one was interesting if you want to know how that whole underworld works, whereas the other one was just kind of more of a big data. We're just collecting data, anonymous data, and doing some analysis on it and whether or not it works. So those they link to those inside the Google article. So
awesome. Well, maybe I'll
jump on those.
I'll go read that.
The hack for hire one I think would be worth reading.
Yeah. All right, I'll check it out.
So
thanks. All right, cool. Well, there you go. That was interesting, I thought. You want me to go first or you first for fun?
Yeah, no. You go ahead and go first because I'll close it out.
Okay, you close it out. So my something fun. I didn't do a lot of fun stuff this week, but my something fun is a potential something fun. I guess I'll say I'll pull the Eric card. No. So anyway, my kids are just barely getting out of the Minecraft age, and they still play occasionally, particularly the younger one. So this is something that was announced by Microsoft this week, which was Minecraft Earth. So although I did have to pull out a tweet in reply to the posting of the trailer video, which basically said, I like how this video explained absolutely nothing about the game. So, essentially this appears to be
Pokemon Go on steroids.
Yeah. I mean, the ability to use augmented reality to tweak, quote unquote, the virtual world around you, which, Microsoft's been doing with the HoloLens, or it's been possible with the HoloLens for a long time. I remember a couple of years ago talking with a friend of mine who had a chance to play with one for a while. about the fact that you could essentially, bind an object in VR to a place in like GPS coordinates. So you
Right.
could do basically the I have no brain cells left. I've used them all up today. What is it called when they go looking for the boxes out in the middle of nowhere at follow the clue?
Geocaching.
Geocaching. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You could essentially do virtual geocaching, right? Go find the
Yep.
sword that's stuck in the stone that's blah 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 blah, right? And so I don't know, but I have to imagine that's some of the stuff sort of underlying this. But the video looked kind of cool. I
Yep.
could imagine my kids really digging that. And then I'll just close by saying, since it implied that they're all kind of mucking with the virtual world where they can see each other, I have some security concerns. So, we'll see.
How long before, if everybody can plop down trees or boxes that everyone else can see, how long before that's abused?
I mean, they have to be thinking. It's Microsoft. They have to be thinking about that. So I'm sure there's decay functions. I'm sure there's abuse functions. I have to imagine that. But they also did release that, artificial AI the other day, or I guess a couple of years ago now, that, immediately turned racist. Right? Remember?
Yeah, I remember that.
So, we'll see. I think we don't yet know what's going to be kind of the killer app for AR. And,
right.
So I think it's going to be interesting to figure out sort of what it is. And so this will be a fun thing to watch.
Yep. Well, John, to help you with your, what you said, your brain cells were not firing. I don't remember your exact quote there. But my something fun is something that I have come to appreciate much more regarding brain cells and regenerating brain cells over the last several weeks, and that is sleep. So my something fun, I know I'm kind of cheating because I couldn't think of anything fun, but, everybody needs to get some good sleep. So
it is highly correlated with health.
And it can be fun.
All right.
Go get some sleep.
Go to sleep. All right, man. Call it that. That's great. I should just end it right there. All right.
Night, John.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Bye.